Welcome to this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KAJ, a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we dive into the worlds created by authors, discover their inspirations, and ensure that you walk away enriched and inspired. And today we have with us author Bernard Chalky White, former from London policeman to becoming an internationally known professional ski instructor to becoming the author and also a self-publisher in category number one, best-selling ski instruction book. He's written a couple of books. We'll talk about his book, Keep Chewing the Granite, how two questions can change your life. So let's dive into the story behind the story. Welcome to the show, Bernard.
Thank you, KJ. Thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show once again, Bernard. This time on the author's voice with KJ. So straightway we'll try to understand, how did you become, it's another story of how you became a ski instructor. But first, let's understand about how did you become an author with all this, so many things happening in your life. When did you think of becoming an author? And you've written not one, but a couple of books here. Let us get into that, that inspiration of yours.
Okay. Well, how I got into writing was it was really the first one, my ski instruction book, which is called The 7 Secrets of Skiing. I realized that down the years that I'd had a great deal of success with the systematic way that I would teach. So I decided to put it on paper so that the general public could get a good idea of the way I teach, and hopefully they can take some inspiration and help them to actually improve their own skiing. But that wasn't that story of that book. A lot of my book is all about never giving up and overcoming naysayers and that kind of thing. And that particular book went through a little bit of naysaying right there, because after I'd actually written the text for the book, the manuscript, I went to see my ski school director in Beaver Creek near to Vail in Colorado in the United States. And I said to him, can I use a couple of the ski instructors for photographic purposes, for demonstration purposes for my book? And he said, yeah. He said, I think that'd be a wonderful idea. He said, but you can't be in them. I said, why is that then? He said, because you don't ski well enough. So obviously, after that comment, I was a little despondent. Anyway, I went away and then I spoke to a very good friend of mine who was actually the guy that would look at all the chapters that I've written for the ski book and get him to, and I'd ask him, how do you think this is? Do you think this is accurate, what I've written here? And pretty much every time he'd come back and say, yeah, I think that's really accurate. And I told him this story about the ski school director. And he said, that's ridiculous. He said, you ski as well as anybody in that ski school. So what I then did was I found my own demonstrators. All 3 of them, the demonstrators, happened to be world synchronized skiing champions. In other words, they were fantastic demonstrators. So anyway, we do the photographic shoot. And after the photographic shoot, the lady that took all the photographs was also a ski instructor examiner. And she said to me, she said, you weren't a world champion demonstrator, but your demonstrations were just as good as the other 3. And in fact, your hand and arm carriage was much better than the other 3. And I went, wow, yeah, okay, good. So I went away and I then published the book. But in the meantime, through this, I'd asked myself, my what if questions that are very much part of this book. Because at first the book was this book, Keep Chewing the Granite, was actually just going to be a memoir. But I decided, well, how can I make this book be of use to other people? And of course, I'd use my 2 questions, what if I don't and what if I do, many times through the years to help me over different through different scenarios. And this was one scenario where I did it as well. And a question I asked myself was, what if I don't go ahead and publish this book? What would be the repercussions of that for me? And actually for the world at large, the skiing world at large. Well, if I don't, I'll probably regret it forever. That's one of the worst emotions, of course, that you can have. And also the public will never get the benefit of what you've written. And so, but I hated those answers at first. So then I turned it around. But then I asked myself, but what if I do publish it? Well, I'll have this, hopefully this really good book that people can get a great deal of information from, and people will be able to learn an awful lot from it, and hopefully become better skiers. And I definitely won't regret it. So that's how that book really started. But the Keep Chewing the Granite book, which is what I think we're really here to talk about today. How that came about was, again, as I said, I decided to write a memoir. And one of the stories in the book was about me, because I failed my ski instructor's exams many, many times over. It took me 8 attempts to pass 3 exams. Part of the reason for that was because I started skiing late for someone trying to become a fully certified ski instructor. I was 26 the first time I ever skied. Most ski instructors start out skiing when they're little kids, when they're infants. But that certainly wasn't me. So it took me a long, long time. And anyway, I'm on one of my courses up in Scotland. This is at the end of the ski season, when the snow on the ground was nasty, wet, slushy snow. If you fell in it, you actually get soaking wet. And this trainer I was with, Jimmy Smith, became a very good friend of mine. He said in his Scottish accent, "Okay, lads," he said, "take one ski off." So we had to ski on one ski, and we had to go up and down this drag lift, being pulled on our feet, just on one ski, and then ski down. And he was standing there watching us as we came down. And I'd never done this before, and I'm coming down on one foot, and then I'd make one turn, maybe 2 turns, and splat into the snow. Get up, do it again, splat into the snow. And I kept falling over, because as I said, I've never done this before. And then one time coming down, I pretty much fell right at Jimmy's feet. And he looked down at me and he said, "Are you all right, Chalky?" I said, "I think so, Jimmy." He said, "Just keep chewing the granite, Chalky." So, which basically means never ever quit. Don't quit. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. Anyway, I actually failed that course, and that was my 3rd attempt with the British Association of Ski Instructors. And there was another big naysayer there. They announced in a trainers examiners meeting after that course, it was announced, me, Chalky White, will never be fully certified because he's the wrong body shape. It's because I've got bandy bowed legs, and it was in order to be able to ski well, you need to be able to get onto the inside edges of the skis, the two that are close together. But mine were always up in the air, so I could never put pressure on them because of my bowed legs. So anyway, I went away pretty despondent, thinking, what now? And somebody in the meantime had mentioned, "Well, have you thought about going to New Zealand?" Which was basically 12,000 miles away from England, because I was living in England still at the time. And so I thought to myself, well, maybe I can go down there. So I bought myself an expensive air ticket and took myself all the way down to New Zealand. And cutting a long story short, a trainer down there, because what the Brits have been doing, the British Association, the people that have been failing me all the time, they've been getting me to try and ski with my feet very close together, like so, which definitely meant the edges of the skis were never in contact with the snow, the inside edges. And this trainer, Mr. Peter Curtis, he yelled at me one day, "If you get your goddamn feet open, you might be able to ski." So I opened my feet, and all of a sudden, my skis flatten out, and these edges now can make contact with the snow. And then suddenly, my skiing just absolutely took off from there. And I passed the New Zealand full certification at the very first attempt, and that's now 41 years ago, and I still use that qualification today. And I really needed that qualification, otherwise I could never have worked overseas. Would probably never have ended up working in the United States as a ski instructor. And of course, as a result of that, if I couldn't have done that, I would never have met my little wife, Lynn, that I've been married to now for 22 years. So it's amazing what happens when you don't quit and you keep going, you find a way. If you think the dream is feasible and you keep going and going and going until it really isn't possible anymore. And that's what really the two questions are all about. It's helping people to never, never, never give in old Winston Churchill's words. So that's how those two books came about to be written.
Absolutely, absolutely, Bernard. Let's talk about Keep Chewing the Granite. What's in the book itself? How have you dealt? It's a memoir, as if I understand, motivational memoir. And how have you dealt it to make it interesting for everyone else? What is it that is inside the book?
Well, the stories, as I say, are basically a memoir of my life. So there's stories taken from my childhood, which I had a pretty terrible childhood at the hands of a very abusive, physically and verbally abusive father, who would he would beat my mother, which I've never been able to forgive him for that. And he used to beat me on a very regular basis. And what happened was, because he would beat me so often, because he expected me to be this great scholar. And I was much more interested in sports and kicking a soccer football around, that kind of thing. And what happened was, I got to the age of 13 and I decided, not very wisely probably, that to basically get my revenge. And because I knew I was going to get a beating after every time I took a school report home, that I would go on strike. At the age of 13, I went on strike at school, and I never did another stroke of work again at school. So I get to the age of 16, when I'm going to take the General Certificate of Education exams, English, math, and physics and chemistry and all that stuff. And of course, I failed them all. But it was a time when it was the first time I decided that I was going to be defiant of somebody. And of course, my father was the biggest naysayer in my life. And it made me defiant and determined I'm going to lead my life very much in the way that I decide, not the way somebody else is going to decide I'm going to live my life. And so that went on. And so that theme really goes on through the book. As I said, I was at first told that it's one of the stories in the book that when I announced in front of a bunch of ski instructors in a place called Andorra, a little country just north of Barcelona, in front of a bunch of ski instructors, where I became, first of all, what they used to commonly call a ski bum. I announced I was going to try to become a ski instructor. And one of these guys said, "Chalky, you'll never be a ski instructor as long as you've got a hole where the sun doesn't shine." Well, that just made me even more determined because another, and I thought, well, and that was short, not too long after I very first came up with my what if questions. And how I came up with the what if questions, by the way, was as you've already mentioned, Ajay. I was a policeman in London. I was a policeman for 9 years, first in the Kent Constabulary just south of London, and then in the Metropolitan Police. But I knew this career wasn't going to be for me, and I really only went in it because, as I said, I had no qualifications. The only reason I went in it was because I needed to do something somewhere. I mean, I had no qualifications, and the way I got in was somehow I kind of fluked my way through their entrance exam. Anyway, I'd been in the police at the time for 9 years as a full policeman, and I just knew this wasn't the life for me. But I'd been on a couple of ski trips, and I decided that I wanted to go back and I wanted to be involved in skiing. I might even be able to become a ski instructor later on. And that was when the very first time these questions came into my head out of nowhere. And one night, and I've been in as I said, I've been in the police for 9 years, procrastinating the years away. And I asked myself, what if I don't? What if I don't go and try to realize the dreams that I've really had in my mind for such a long time of travel and, you know, hopefully being involved in sports? What would be the repercussions of that for me if I don't? And of course, the answers I got were absolutely terrible. And the main one was get that horrible emotion again, regret. And I sat there, and of course I was pretty miserable after asking those questions, because you get all these answers that you don't want. Because, you know, if I don't do this, I'll regret it forever, and I won't have achieved any of the dreams I ever had. So that was at the moment when I had got an emotion change from very negative to very positive. And that was right after I asked my second question, but what if I do go? If I go back to Andorra and I try and learn to ski, and then maybe I'll be able to become a ski instructor. And maybe I'll be able to travel as well, which I did later on. And so the very, very next day, as we used to put it when I was a policeman, I put in my papers. In other words, the very next day I resigned. That was the 10th of August, 1975. And I never, everybody said, you'll come back, you'll be back. And I never, ever went back, and I never wanted to go back, because I really got involved in the ski business. As you know, I eventually became certainly an internationally known ski instructor who had a great deal of success. And it was all because I just didn't quit. I never, never, never gave in. And it's those two questions, what if I don't and what if I do, that were a real factor in me not giving in.
Absolutely, absolutely, Bernard. So, if you can read any particular chapter, any particular short excerpt from the book, so that, you know, a lot of people have read it, a lot of people will read it, but there will be some who may not be able to lay their hands on the book. They will be able to listen to it, at least some part, and then perhaps think of getting the book.
Well, what I could do is I could read perhaps the foreword by the gentleman that is actually very famous now. He was a ski client of mine, and Mr. Howard Lutnick, and he was the gentleman that was the chairman and CEO, chief executive officer of an organization called Cantor Fitzgerald in the Twin Towers in New York City on September the 11th, 2001. And the only reason he wasn't killed in the building with 658 of his employees and his brother and his best friend is because he happened to take his boy to his first day of school that day. Otherwise, he would have been in there too. And he eventually became my a very long time ski client. I skied with him for about 12 consecutive years, and he wrote the foreword. So perhaps I can read his foreword if that's okay. It's not very long. Okay,
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
One moment, I'm going to put some glasses on here so I can see it. I see you wear them too, so.
yeah.
All right, one moment. Here we go. So I started off, I wrote the first part of it, and I'll read it back to you. For many years, I enjoyed the privilege of being Mr. Howard Lutnick's private snow skiing instructor and coach. His book, On Top of the World, Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, and 9/11, a story of loss and renewal, was a New York bestseller. At the time of writing, Mr. Lutnick is the nominee to be Commerce Secretary in the Trump administration that takes power on the 20th of January 2025. Certainly that gentleman is the most resilient human this author has ever had the honor of meeting. Born in 1961, Howard Lutnick is an American billionaire, chairman and chief executive officer of Cantor Fitzgerald. That organization lost the most, as I've said, 658 employees in the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks on New York's Twin Towers. Among them were his brother, his best friend. On that fateful day, the only reason Mr. Lutnick didn't lose his own life was because he took his eldest son for his first day at school. Howard Lutnick is known for his charity work through Cantor Fitzgerald Relief Fund and the aid victims' families of the terrorist attacks. Read on. So now this is actually his foreword right now. These are his words. For years, I would head out to Colorado with my family for our annual ski trip. Each year, we would meet instructors who ski beautifully, but rarely taught, much less were they able to describe the fundamentals of the sport. Then, 15 years ago, I met Chalky. Stories, 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 yet each laced with instruction. He was laser focused on improvement, but entertained me at the same time. I had learned years before how to ski old school, skis, knees, everything together. The first thing Chalky did when we skied to the bottom was to head to a ski bar. On the walls were action photographs of the greats, leaning forward, arms spread, and extended legs apart. He rhetorically asked, "Do you want to ski your way, or do you want to ski like them?" He knew that I didn't need to answer. Stories are how Chalky communicates. This book abounds with them, along with his what-if solutions. My life has had extraordinary pain, from the loss of both my parents when I was young to the tragic events of the 11th of September 2001 that took the lives of my brother, best friend, and 658 of my friends and co-workers. I've also had the best of life with my wonderful wife of 25 years and more, 4 incredible children, and a warm, loving, extended family, including my fabulous sister and wonderful brothers-in-law and in-laws. My business life was very successful until it was almost destroyed by 9/11. Then we methodically rebuilt Cantor Fitzgerald to where we are today. 13,000 employees with 2 public companies, bigger and stronger than ever. We have taken care of the 658 families of those we lost, providing over $180 million in financial support, as well as our Cantor Fitzgerald Relief Fund, which is with them every step it could be. But there are always lessons to learn. I like to start with the fundamentals, from the bottom up. Chalky owns them. He communicates with laughter, happiness, and purpose. I've always enjoyed Chalky's path. Interesting, fun, and funny, but always with that drive and an unrelenting passion, along with a never ever quit attitude that fosters his success. Enjoy. Signed, Howard Lutnick.
Wonderful, wonderful, Bernard. So great words there, great words for your book, and these are not less than somebody who is very accomplished in so many aspects of life. So I want to understand from you, Bernard, who is this book for? It's lots of wisdom, lots of life, lots of everything, lots of skiing into it.
My overall attitude for many years in life has been, if you have a dream or an ambition that's really kind of burning inside and you really want to achieve it, it's almost a crime for you to give up. You've got to follow through until you've accomplished what you really want to do, that you've achieved what you want and you've realized your dream. Because if you don't, here it comes again, It's that nasty old word, regret. Because if you don't do it and you don't follow through until it's not possible to follow through anymore, you will regret it for the rest of your life. And that is such a terrible emotion to actually have. And that's, so the book is actually aimed at people that want to realize dreams or ambitions, and be able to follow through and really accomplish the things in their lives that they want. Without the two questions, what if I don't and what if I do, I'm not sure that I'd even be alive now, because I would have stayed in the police, which is where I had a very, not a very good lifestyle, lots of shift work, ended up, with too much drinking, too much smoking, eating meals at 3 o'clock in the morning, which can't be too healthy for you, and all that kind of thing. So my two questions got me out of all that, and got me into, I'd always wanted to be involved in sport, and becoming a ski instructor, what a massive dream there I accomplished. And it all happened because of my what if question. So the nice thing about the two questions is they are very simple and they're very easy to use, and you can use them at any moment in time. And especially for people that overcoming their self-doubt that they can do this, and of course third-party naysayers, such as my father, such as that ski school director that I was telling you about, and many others down the years that have tried to sort of thwart my progress. Even when years ago I tried to do a roller ski from one end of Britain, between the two extremes in the north, John O'Groats in the very north of Scotland, to the southwest of England, to Land's End, which you may have heard of. And I was going to do it. Let me just stretch over here and show you this. I volunteered on a pair of these things. These are summer training cross-country skis, which you can use on public roads. And at the back here, you have a wheel. This wheel here only goes in one direction. So if you're walking up a hill, it can't slide back, much like it simulates a cross-country ski where it's put a certain kind of wax put on the bottom of the ski to stop it sliding back when you're walking up a hill on snow. And it was said to me, "Aren't you too old to do that?" I was 41 years old, and that's when I said, "Well, no, I definitely don't think I'm too old." And again, I used the what if questions. What if I don't go and do this ski from one end of Britain to the other? What would be the repercussions of that? Well, if I don't, the very people that I'm trying to raise funds for, spinally injured people, because I'd had an accident, by the way, a few years ago, 2 accidents, one of them where I nearly broke my neck. I could have easily been a paraplegic or a tetraplegic. What if I don't do this? What would be the repercussions of the people I'm trying to raise the money for, which are people that are the paraplegics and tetraplegics, to try and get them back into some kind of normality through sports? And again, that big word regret came up again. And of course, the other part of the answer was, well, if I don't, I won't raise the money that I'm going to actually do this for. And in the end, I went ahead and I did it. And I did pretty well. I only fell over. I think I fell over twice on the whole 38 days. It took me 38 days, whole 38 days of the trip. And because I followed through with the help of my what if questions, but remember now, this is 40 years ago now, exactly 40 years ago, I raised $40,000 US dollars, the equivalent of $40,000 US dollars for them. And of course, this is back in the age before any of the internet or any of that stuff. So that was, I felt that was quite an accomplishment. That would be worth a lot more money than that these days, of course. Yeah. So following, if you just keep following through and try and use these questions that I'm saying to try. And this can be very useful for people, for example, in sales teams. because as I well know myself from one of my own experiences when I was trying to sell encyclopedia books in Germany, it's very, very hard to either knock on a door or pick up the phone to talk to a stranger to try and sell to them. And a salesperson who perhaps might be slightly intimidated by someone he might be intimidated by someone he's going to call, would say to himself, what if I don't go and knock on this door or pick up the phone and talk to this person that I'm nervous of? What if I don't do that? What will be the repercussions of that? And an answer you can come up with is, well, if I don't, I won't make a sale. And if I never knock on the door, I'll never make a sale. And if I don't make any sales, I'll soon be out of a job. And I'll regret it forever because I didn't follow through on what I said I was going to do. So you get, as I said, you get very bad answers from that question. But then the emotion change, that's the important thing about this. The emotion change between what if I don't and what if I do, and the answers you get from both. And then so I turned it around and said, well, what if I do? What if I do go and knock on that door? What can be the repercussions of that for me then? And of course, I might sell to this person. I might sell lots of books to lots of other people, and I can make a lot of money, and I'll have enough to take me back to Andorra and still be able to pay for my very first ski instructor's course, and I might soon become a ski instructor. Well, guess what? I've been sitting on the ground outside this door for a long time. I went and banged on the door, and the man came to the door and he said, "Yeah, what do you need?" in his American accent, because I was selling, it was to United States military in West Germany. And I said to him, "My name's Bernard from England, and while I'm here in Germany, I'd also like to visit an American family. Would I be welcome in your home?" "Come on in, Bernard." Well, cutting a long story short, I ended up selling my very first set of encyclopedias to him. And I went on and I did that job for 11 months, became a manager with my own car and my own caravan recreation vehicle to tow behind the car. And I earned enough money, 11 months, to take me back to Andorra, where I skied and skied and skied, didn't have to work because I had enough money so I could just concentrate on the skiing. Still had enough money at the end of that ski season to take me all the way to Scotland, where I took my very first ski instructor's exam. And it was the one and only time when I passed a ski instructor's exam the first time. So it just shows what a very simple solution like what if I don't and what if I do can do for you. And after every single story in Keep Chewing the Granite, there's an explanation of different ways you might be able to use the what if questions. And that's it, really. And of course, the stories in the book, they go from all about my abusive childhood, as I've already mentioned, going into the police cadets because I went into that through defiance to my father. That's really what, again, taught me defiance. I will not give in to naysayers and bullies, and of course I never did through the years. And the book will be interesting for people because there's tragic stories in it. There's even stories from my police career, all about a tragic murder where I was the first police witness on the scene of a murder where a girl had been disemboweled with a cutthroat razor. There's that story, and all kinds of other stories that go through the book that are funny stories, intriguing stories that people can just enjoy, even if they don't think they need to use the what if questions. I think the memoir on it would stand on its own as a really good read for people, and I think they would really enjoy it. As I said, there's lots of good funny stories in there. I can tell you one funny story if you'd like me to. It's very short. Should I read it from the book?
Yes.
I'll read it from the book. One moment, it's right here. me put my peepers on again. The story is called a chairlift ride with one demure lady. In 1995, not long after my arrival in Beaver Creek to work as a ski instructor, Beaver Creek in Colorado, that is in the United States, I was assigned to one lady client for a private lesson. She was a competent intermediate skier, so I decided that we use the Strawberry Park chairlift. It served the kind of slopes I needed for someone of this lady's level. There were places for 4 skiers to sit on our chair, but the lady sat at one end and I at the other, leaving 2 empty seats between us. We were as far from each other as we could be due to the restrictions of the bench seat of the chair. As always, as is common amongst instructors with new clients, I tried to engage the lady in conversation by asking her about different subjects relevant to our instructor-client relationship, including a little about her skiing abilities and goals. But I perceived that this seemingly demure lady didn't want to talk much. Her responses to my questions rarely expanded beyond yes and no. Feeling that I was flogging a dead horse, which in England basically means wasting my time, so to speak, I shut up for a while. And then it happened. Shortly before the chair reached the top, where we would be obliged to vacate it, very discreetly, I passed wind, as one is prone to do on occasion. Then suddenly, out of the blue, not having spoken for several minutes, my demure lady client blurted, "Do they keep farm animals up here?" Stunned, I could muster no words. Only on that occasion did I ever ski with that lady. I can't imagine why. And then afterwards, I actually put, there's one of the takeaways on how I used the what if questions out in that situation. Would you like me to read that part of it too, AJ? Yeah.
Yes.
The takeaway is, and that's the way I address it after every chapter, the takeaway is. So the takeaway is in this situation was, what if I hadn't skied with that demure lady that day, or should I ask, my slightly warped sense of humor getting the better of me, what if I hadn't, as I thought I had, discreetly passed wind at that moment? The simple answer is, I would never have been able to time after time cause so many raptures of laughter for my friends and colleagues, me included, as I so many times down the years told that sordid little story, after dinner story. For a long time I thought, one moment, turning the page. Do they keep farm animals one here? I thought the title, Do They Keep Farm Animals Up Here, would be a wonderful and fun title for this book. I only changed my mind when it was pointed out that such a title would not offer clues, the book in large part being motivational in nature, of what this book is all about. Linny, my lovely wife, thinks I should live in a barn anyway, or worse. Where's the pitchfork? I need to make my bed. So, because of that story, I got to tell that story down the years at dinner parties and stuff, and of course it would cause a little bit of mirth, a little bit of humour, and get people laughing, which I sometimes think you definitely need to do at some dinner parties, We
Absolutely.
Don't want boring affairs, do we?
Absolutely, Bernard. So this is one book. You have also written another book that was on the ski part of it. Anything else in the pipeline that you are working on? Anything else you want the world to know about that you are doing, especially this motivational speaking thing, if I understand?
Yeah, that's right. Because of I have this the what if questions. I think they could really help a lot of companies, especially sales teams, because I think it can really help people. Like I said, I've just mentioned about the difficulty of selling. It's one of the reasons why salespeople in companies get paid probably more than most other people because it's the toughest job to sell to people. And if there's a way to persuade people to on a regular basis pick up a phone or knock on a door cold and ask people, do you want to buy this thing from me? And obviously approaching it in a slightly different way, then these questions can be really, really useful to them, as I've found down the years. Had I not knocked on that door when I was in Germany and spoken to that young American soldier, there's a very strong chance that I would never have become a ski instructor because I just didn't have the money to be at that time to be able to fund my journey to becoming a ski instructor. So very, very important. As old Winston Churchill used to say, never, never, never give in. And of course, as we know, he didn't. And because he didn't, in large part, is why the world we have now, because of what he and at that time, Britain not giving up did. So yeah, just the game is just to keep going and going and going and never, ever give in. What if I don't? What if I do? And get that big change of emotion. That's what it's all about. And actually, the motivational speech I have is called How to Say Nay to Your Naysayers and Have the Last Laugh. And gladly, I've had the laugh many, many times over now.
Wonderful, wonderful. There's so much to learn from you, Chalky, and I'm sure a lot to learn from your book, especially this one, Keep Chewing the Granite. So what's the best way for people to connect with you?
To actually connect with me directly, they can use my email address, which is chalkygo@gmail.com. Chalkygo is spelled C Charlie, H Hotel, A Alpha, L Lima, K Kilo, Y Yankee, G Golf, O Oscar. So it's chalkygo@gmail.com. And if they want to phone me, they're welcome to do that too. It's a United States number, so it will be, they dial, if they're not in America, they would dial 001 or +1 970-390-6267. Again, that's 970-390-6267. And I'd love to come and talk to any kind of organizations. They don't have to be companies necessarily. I've even given speeches at a place like in Denver, in Colorado, in the United States, called the Stout Street Organization, where many young people are kind of forced to go in order to overcome addiction to alcohol and drugs. I've actually gone and spoken to them a couple of 3 times, and I know that those speeches have been very successful because people have told me that I've spoken to in those situations. I've actually used the 2 questions, and it's helped them to try to start to establish their own lives in positive ways and start to achieve their own dreams without being addicted to alcohol and drugs, etc. So all kinds of people could actually benefit from this. So the name of the speech is How to Say Nay to Your Naysayers and Have the Last Laugh, which is what we all want all of the time. And plus, actually, right now, never being one to turn down a challenge. In a couple of weeks' time, right here where I am in Mexico, I've been challenged by a friend of mine because I like to sing. And he's challenged me to do, and I've never done this before, to put on a 2-hour solo singing show and in front of a big audience. So hopefully I'm going to get a big audience for that. And the idea of that is also to raise money for hungry children in this area. And what this charity that I'm doing it for, that they manage to feed hungry children at least 2 meals every day. And of course they need funds to do that. And hopefully I'm going to be able to persuade people to donate to that particular charity. So yeah, so hopefully I try and remain useful if I can, AJ. That's what I try to really do.
Wonderful, wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the Author's Voice with KAJ. Thank you so much indeed for
Okay,
joining us.
can I just before we go, AJ, can I just mention that if people want to buy the book, to go on to Amazon.com or pretty much any Amazon site, and they can, if they punch in the words on Amazon, keep chewing the granite, keep chewing the granite, then they will find the book. And there's already quite a few 5-star reviews of the book right there that people can read. So yes,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.